The Nashville Predators scored a half dozen goals, and UC Saros got a shutout in Saturday's preseason home opener against the Lightning. We're going to share our one word to describe the game, talk about Jonathan Marchessault's debut, and give you the roster updates on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this, we're back at it, y'all, Monday episode with a welcome to any first-time listeners, a happy Monday to our everydayers, and of course, a shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support, and we love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, the roster cuts have happened again. And then there were 31, my friends. The Predators announced a roster update yesterday afternoon. We're going to tell you who is getting a little bit more time in Nashville and who is heading to Milwaukee for training camp. Plus, we're going to talk about Jonathan Marchessault's debut with Nashville and give you our one word to describe Nashville's 6-0 preseason #preseason win over the Lightning. And we're going to share some other standout players. Before we dive into all of that in today's episode, want to let you know that this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, yesterday afternoon, word came down, and then there were 31. A lot of fellas have headed back to kick off Milwaukee Admirals training camp. So real quick, let's walk through, who is where, and then I'd love to get your opinion on how you feel about some of this. So placed on waivers, Kiefer Bellows, Vinny Hinostroza, Matt Murray. Headed to Milwaukee, forwards Anthony Angelo, Easton Armstrong, Alex Campbell, Jordan Frasca, Cale Howarth, Joachim Kimmel, Jake Lucchini, Kyle Marino, Navrin Mutter, Cal O'Reilly, Reed Schaefer, and Kevin Wall. Defensemen Kevin Gravel, Jeremy Hansel, Lucas Johansson, Jake Livingstone, Jack Mateer, Chad Nychuk, Luke Prokop, and Ryan Ufko. And goaltenders Magnus Krona, Drew DeRitter, and Ethan Hayter. I know that's a lot of names there, but I'm just curious, Emma, when you kind of saw this recent roster update, what stood out to you about the players who maybe are headed to Milwaukee? And did anything jump out at you when it comes to players who maybe are not headed to Milwaukee yet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there were any major surprises here. I don't think there was anyone that's, should have made the opening night roster who is now headed to Milwaukee. Like, I don't think there was anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's all just kind of, I don't think, like, I would encourage people to think maybe it's not like, oh, this is a punishment or they did poorly in the preseason or whatever it is, like, oh, and now they're getting relegated to Milwaukee. It's like, no, these are players who, like, while yes, everyone technically has a chance coming into preseason or coming into training camp, these are not players who are expected to have an impact for Nashville on the NHL roster this year. So it's like, nothing is bad or wrong or anything like that. I think it's just, there were just no real surprises here.
Yeah. I was a little bit bummed, but again, I'm with you. Not at all surprised to see Ryan Ufko head back just because I've so enjoyed seeing him play. But again, this is somebody who had a great camp, but you have to remember he only played 9 regular season AHL games last year, only 15. Well, he played the 15 postseason games. So he barely has a belt, let alone games under it.
Yes.
So, as much as he had a great camp, and I think he was one of several players who had a really good camp, there's nothing surprising about him headed to Milwaukee because he just really needs that. Some players of note that are still in Nashville, and I would say maybe there may be one or two here that I'm like, okay. Zachary LaRue, Ozzy Weisblatt, Mark Delgaizo, Nick Blankenberg, Tanner Mullendike, and Adam Wilsby are still here in Nashville at training camp. So when I look at that, I think love that Zachary LaRue is getting another long look. Ozzy Weisblatt, this is such an interesting story because you and I have talked about players like Cody Glass. We've talked about this as far as Phil Tomasino. Sometimes players just need a fresh start. And Ozzy Weisblatt is somebody who's come into this organization and he has embraced kind of this fresh start after San Jose. And I think he's really knocking people's socks off with what he has done with this opportunity. And I love that we get to see a little more of him. Now, do I think Ozzy Weisblatt is going to be on your opening night roster in your top 6? No. But man, is he doing everything he can to make the most of the opportunity that this particular franchise is giving him. I love it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, not necessarily a sign that he is going to be on the opening night roster, but what it is a sign that he's getting an extended look. And we've talked about this on past episodes before, that a lot of training camp is not deciding who your opening night lineup is going to be. It's deciding who gets called up first if you have an injury to your opening night lineup. And it's like, that's probably what a lot of this is like you're trying to figure out. Plan A is it's already decided. Like it's already kind of been decided before camp even started, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. That's just kind of how it is. A lot of camp is figuring out plan B.
Right.
In case someone gets hurt, in case, whatever the circumstances, someone gets hurt, something's not working, whatever it is. And I think that that's why you look at the players who are getting this extended look now, who have not yet been assigned to Milwaukee, Zach LaRue, Ozzy Weisblatt, Adam Wilsby,
Yes, another good one.
those are all guys who you would think as like, okay, yeah, those are the next men up. Those are the
Mhm.
guys that you would kind of have in the back of your mind that, okay, if there's going to be a call up here, if there's going to be, a change, if something's going to happen, these are the guys that are going to be the next men up. Now is really our only opportunity to see those guys playing alongside Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, Roman Yossi, like all these guys. This is your last chance to see how they kind of play together. And so if you have that opportunity, why not give them an extended look right now?
Yeah. And it's not just for, I think back to the 2017 Cup run where Nashville, I mean, there were stretches through that postseason run where you had guys dropping like flies and they were calling up people. And we were like, I'm sorry, can you respell that name? But being one of those guys that gets called up in, even that far out, the impression that you make in camp matters even now. Now, of course, what you do when you get to Milwaukee matters, and what Carl Taylor sees from them, and what, the front office sees from these players in Milwaukee, that obviously weighs in a lot. But you're looking at, okay, this is where they are now on an NHL level. Put them back in the AHL, put more experience, into their toolbox, more game situations into their toolbox. And these are the players who you may not see until April. But, Andrew Brunette's not going to see them day in and day out then. So he really wants to
Right.
get a look. And Joachim Kemmel, I think, is a great example of this. We had chatted and we had a comment on one of our videos about it. It just seems like he's disappeared, and he really hasn't. As a matter of fact, Andrew Brunette said that he thought he had one of the best, played the best he's seen him play in that Saturday game. But you don't need him right now. So it's okay to send
Which
him
is a
back
good
to
thing.
Milwaukee, which is a great thing, which is a great thing. You don't need him now, but that doesn't mean that he is not a high value prospect for the Predators. I think when you're looking at the Weisblatts, the LaRues, the Wilsbys, those are the, what? Like you said, when we get a couple injuries, as we get further down, as they gain experience in the AHL, they're the ones whose leap between NHL and AHL is the smallest. And you learn that now. So this is a long-term, kind of a long-term plan. I think training camp, is a big part of decisions that could get made, like you said, whenever an injury occurs or even in April. So, let's see how these sort out. But I do like, I like the list of players getting a longer look. I feel pretty good about it. And I think those players have certainly earned more time under the watchful eye of Andrew Brunette for sure. Coming up, we're going to take a closer look at that Saturday game. Predators won 6-0 over sort of the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to talk about that. We're going to tell you about Jonathan Marchessault's debut in gold and a couple other players that stood out. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you are looking forward to seeing the Predators in action this season, or maybe you just want to plan some fun fall events, you need to check out all of the deals that are available for you at Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, music, theater, and comedy. Gametime now has this great new feature. It's called Gametime Picks, and it makes getting tickets to your favorite events so much easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff, and it only shows you the incredible deals on the best seats, so you don't have to waste time combing through all of those tickets on your own. Gametime right now has great deals on Nashville SC games, Tennessee Titans, Vanderbilt, and Tennessee Tech football. Look, if you love Post Malone's new country album, which my son is a huge fan of, you can get great seats to see him at Nissan Stadium next month. And for those of you who really like a lot of fun, tickets to The Price is Right at TPAC in October are on sale at Gametime as well. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Well, Emma, on Saturday, Nashville had a big win on the scoreboard, putting up, my friends, a half a dozen points against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But before we get too carried away, let's talk about the fact that this is not actually the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, let's not put the cart before the horses, not to, what was it that you said before? Not to yuck your yum.
Yes.
Not to yuck your yum, but I don't necessarily know that this game is a portent of things to come on the scoreboard. So let's just talk about that. Of course, there was no Hedman, no Kucherov, no Braden Point, no Ryan McDonough, et cetera, et cetera. And I will say this, one of our insiders pointed out, we were chatting with our insiders about the Tampa Bay Lightning game. And one of our insiders had a really great point. Not only was the roster not Tampa Bay's star players, but all of the players there kind of probably were a little bit distracted because you had Hurricane Helene coming through. And of course, the game Friday was canceled because of that. So, I think maybe there was just some off ice things weighing as well that you have to take into account. So technically we beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 6-0, but it's like a bikini. It tells you some things, but it doesn't reveal everything.
Yeah. I mean, another important absence, I would say, is Andrei Vasilevsky.
Yes.
Also not there. So
not there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's kind of similar in the reverse to when the Predators were in Florida playing the doubleheader against the Panthers.
Gosh, yes.
It was like, especially that second game, it was like the Panthers like Stanley Cup winning starting lineup against the Milwaukee Admirals. It was like, all right. Okay.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, you take it with a grain of salt, and I think, but that's the thing is like, I know preseason games are exciting because it's like hockey's back. Like This is, it's fun for the fans. We finally have something to get excited about. And yes, like it's easy to say like, well, the games don't matter. And they really don't when it comes to the final score. That's really not the point. I mean, no
Mhm.
pun intended. It's not about the points, but like I think that it's more about, this is the best evaluation tool that the coaches and the management have for these players. It's like, see them, because like Barry Trotz has said, it's like it's fantasy hockey until we drop the puck. Now we're dropping the puck and we get to see, okay, how do these pieces actually work? Like how do they look great on paper? How do they work? And so I think that that's what these games are for. So it's like, if the final score is 6-0 in either direction, frankly, it doesn't
Right.
matter. It's more about like, all right, did these combinations of certain players work, or which I think, at least in this case, you learn which players have chemistry with one another, and you learn, or kind of maybe confirm your suspicions about which players have the best chemistry with one another. I mean, I think we saw that against Tampa Bay. You see, Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista. We know those guys have had a pre-existing relationship from previous seasons. They had good chemistry. So we kind of saw that sort of come back, and it's good to see, and it's good to see kind of new pieces as well. We got to see Jonathan Marchessault for the first
Oh,
time with the
yeah.
Predators, so it's just like, it's good to see like all the things that you think are true. It's
Mhm.
these preseason games are kind of the, okay, yeah, no, we were on the money with that. So
Yeah.
I think it was good. Again, I wouldn't put too much stock into the final score, but I think that when it comes to the purpose of a preseason game and what you're trying to get out of it, I think that this was a very good one for Nashville.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of players, veterans, of course, you don't see as often in the preseason game. And a lot of that is because you don't necessarily you don't need to know, you don't need to wonder, what does Roman Yossi bring to the Nashville Predators? We're good with that. I feel like we can Scooby Doo our way into what is he going to be good at.
Yeah. I wonder if that Philip Forsberg guy is any good.
Is he
Like,
any good?
oh,
Like, what can he really do in a game situation? But it is so different than what we see at training camp and practice, because in practice, the system. If you're, defending, the system that you're playing against, kind of the tendencies of the players. And so this is just a better evaluation tool. Like you said, it's really the best evaluation tool, because you can only gauge so much of this in training camp. You mentioned Jonathan Marchessault made his Nashville Predators debut, and none too shabby, Mr. Marchessault. 1 goal, 2 assists, which is a great omen, but my friend's not a guarantee. Again, this is the preseason. What did you think overall of what you saw from Marchessault in this game?
I think overall, I mean, he comes as advertised, but I think one of the biggest things is, he is a guy that he plays with a little bit of fire. He's a little spicy, and I
He
love,
is.
just I like my people and my hockey players like I like my food, just a little bit spicy. And so I know that you can't relate on
I cannot
that
relate.
level, but I think you like some spicy people, maybe not
I do.
spicy food, but you can appreciate some spicy people.
Mhm.
And I think that that's how Jonathan Marchessault is, and we saw that even in preseason. I think like one of the first whistles in that game, it seemed like he was already in the mix, standing up for his teammates. He was standing up for Phil Tomasino when he got kind of pushed into the boards there. He was
Love
he was
that.
mixing it up with other guys. And again, it's not like any of that was necessarily surprising per se, but it's more just like, it's good to see. It's good to see
Yes.
when, a guy is not just going to be, okay, yes, obviously he's a good player. We know that. That's why they went and signed him. But it's like he's a good teammate as well. And you're now kind of seeing that. So I think that Nashville, really Smashville, will love this guy because
Yes.
he gets in there, he mixes things up, he gets right in there, and he's tough, he's physical, he's not afraid to throw some elbows, and especially if it means standing up for his teammates. So I think that we saw that in this preseason game, because again, like you said, it's like, we know what these guys can do. Like, it's not like we're sitting here like, yeah, but is he any good? Like, yeah, we know that. We know he's
Yes.
good.
Yes,
But
he
it's
is.
like, how does he work with this system, with these teammates, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it was good to see. Like, it seems like a very good fit. And this was our
Yes.
first time seeing him not only, in a Predators uniform, but playing with Predators players. And, there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that he fit right in, didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, such a great piece. Barry Trotz talks about these serial winners, and he's won the Stanley Cup and he's won the Conn Smythe. But you also love to see, like you said, that spice, that defending your teammate, that buy-in from Marchessault right away. And this is somebody who, similar to Stamkos, shorter time period, really thought he was going to be a part of another franchise for a lot longer and wasn't. And credit to him, because he really has embraced Nashville and this team and this opportunity. And it's not an easy transition, I don't think, for the situation from Stamkos and Marchessault. This is what Jonathan Marchessault had to say after the game.
If you look at the stats around the NHL, like how many goals get scored like in front of the net, I think it's something pretty high. So just always trying to get there, and when it's your turn to drive the net, it's your turn to drive the net. And I like to go there. Honestly, it's more of getting the legs back and the lungs and your cardio and everything. I think that's what I worry about a little bit more, and just good habits, playing the right way. And it was okay for the first game, to be honest. It's a different system, so I'm still trying to adapt, and I'll get better with it.
Okay, I just have to say this. Jonathan Marchessault, please don't be Ryan O'Reilly 2.0. I thought it was okay for the first. You know what? For this preseason game, I will allow you to say it was okay, even though you had a goal and 2 assists and you played really well on a line with some young players, and but let's not make this a habit of underestimating how good you are.
No,
We can only pay for one sports psychologist at a time with our Locked On Predators money.
Yes. Listen, Ryan O'Reilly would be like, in this game, I don't even know what Ryan O'Reilly would do, because they didn't even score a goal. Tampa didn't. It would be like, oh, that one goal they scored, that was my fault. And be like, well, Ryan, you weren't on the – doesn't matter. It was my fault.
Yeah.
It was
You
totally
didn't
me.
dress for the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should have, and that's why it's my fault. Yeah.
Yes.
That would
I
be him.
kind of laughed when I heard that. I was like, oh, sweetie, we only have room for one, like, overly introspective responsibility person.
And Kevin Lankinen is not here, so we don't have a life coach. So let's just make it
We need you
easier
to
on
keep it
us.
together.
Yeah.
Keep it together. Coming up, we're going to hear from Tommy Novak and from Andrew Brunette on what they saw from Jonathan Marchessault's game. And we're also going to talk about how some of these young players performed Saturday night. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, friends, it is the most wonderful time of the year for sports, and the best place to celebrate that is with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. NFL fans, you can kick off this season with a big return at FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of your NFL game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And Tennessee Titans fans, I know it's not been easy, but they're at Miami tonight. You can go and check out all of the options there at FanDuel ahead of the game. And you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. You get $200 in bonus bets, absolutely guaranteed, with your first $5 bet. So check out all of the action and all of the deals at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, we heard from Jonathan Marchessault. We would like him to be a little bit more positive, a little more optimistic maybe next time, but we're gonna see how he does as the season progresses, as he self-evaluates after a game. But I really loved what Tommy Novak and Andrew Brunette had to say about Jonathan Marchessault and the way he played. So let's hear from them, and then we're going to talk about that.
He knows how to score. I think he's done that his whole life. He knows how to get himself in positions to score. He's gritty. he goes in those areas because he knows you're going to get rewarded when he goes in those areas. And he has skill to play on the perimeter, but he also has a little bit of grease that he can play on the inside, and that's why he's been such a good player. That's why he's won a Conn Smythe. That's why he's at the career he's had.
I mean, he's just a super smart player. It's super fun to play with. Sees the ice really well. Obviously, I see him in practice. He absolutely rips the puck. He finds corners and snipes goalies. So, really valuable player, obviously, and it's a pleasure to be on the ice with him, and it's going to be great for us to have him this year.
One of the things that I love about Jonathan Marchessault's game is that it is very dimensional, because you have players who are, high skill elite players. And then you oftentimes have players who are like the greasy goal guys and the getting there and mixing up players. Jonathan Marchessault is both. And that is so unique. That's so unique.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, again, this was a less skilled version, and I don't mean this as an insult. It's just, my observation, kind of like a Jason Zucker, but like a more highly skilled version of Jason Zucker. It's like he's gritty, he's greasy, but he's also skilled. And it's like you can kind of have both. And that package, that combination, you don't really come across that a lot. So I think that, we're kind of seeing, again, he has that spice, but he's also got the skill. And also, can I just say, I'm so proud of Tommy Novak for how far he's come in his
talk about that. Let's go, girl. Take it.
Not only his game on the ice, but like his speech and skills with the media. I'm very proud of him. I've seen him come a long way. So I just felt like I had to say something. Like, he's come a long way. And I think, honestly, though, there is some truth to that with how it kind of conveys on the ice, is that he has come a long way in his confidence and his maturity. And I think we're seeing that in more ways than one. So as someone who has watched Tommy Novak from, as you, Ann, would say, a young sprout, I'm very proud of him for where he is now.
I actually thought the same thing watching the post game with Tommy Novak. That's funny you say that. I thought the same thing. I thought he is so much more comfortable. And look, here's what is so real, and bless athletes, because the talent and skill set it takes to be very successful on the ice doesn't necessarily have a darn thing to do with somebody who communicates well off of the ice. Those are two very different skill sets. So I agree with you. It's so funny you say that, because when I was watching it, I was like, Tommy Novak, you go.
I was like, look at him, because his first full season with Nashville, I spent a lot of time. I will say, I take a little bit of credit. I coached him a little bit in the media stuff and how to answer questions. And I remember having to kind of lead with the question. It's like, now I can just ask a question and he'll answer it. And I don't feel like I have to, word it a certain way. He just gets it now. So very proud.
Don't have to bribe him with ice cream.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Who else, when you looked at this game on Saturday, Emma, who else stood out to you? Who else's performance did you think, okay, this is of note?
I think a couple guys. First of all, Phil Tomasino obviously was on the score sheet. We saw that. He's another guy who I think I've been very impressed with how he, like, again, obviously his skills are his skills, but I think I've been more impressed with his maturity level, with how he's handled everything that's happened in the last year. And not that there's been any like glaring incident or anything that led to him getting cut from the roster or anything like that. It was just like, it's one of those things that happens. And I think that getting sent back to the AHL, a lot of how you're going to be evaluated from there on out is how you handle that. And I think that he's handled it exceptionally well. I think that he is actually, he looks like a different player now. And I don't just mean like he's more skilled. We've always known how skilled he is. I think it's just like a different level of maturity, and it just he seems like more of a pro now than kind of the bubble fringe guy that maybe we thought he was before. He just seems much more like, okay, I belong here and I'm here to prove that. So I think he's one. I think another one that really stood out to me was Dante Fabbro. And I think that, he's maybe one that, again, is not a guy who shows up on the score sheet a ton, although he did in this game. But again, it was 6-0. So everyone was on the score sheet. Yeah. But I think that he was very visible to me offensively very early on. And that's not something you usually say about Dante Fabbro. And I think that he was taking a lot of shots. He was creating a lot of chances. He was kind of, buying into that Andrew Brunette system. And I think it took him a little bit to actually, I think the first goal, it was his initial shot that got tipped in. And it was just like, okay, yeah, you start to see it. If you do it enough, if you create enough chances, eventually you'll get there.
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
Something's gonna happen. And so I think it's like, it's good to see those kinds of opportunities happen and to see them work well in preseason, because it helps to build guys' confidence. And again, it's not like, I don't think Dante Fabbro is a guy who's fighting for a roster spot, but if he is fighting for a starting spot, I think he looked really good. Like, he looked like a guy who belonged in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say Mark Del Gaiso, I thought, looked, again, very comfortable. He played with Luke Schenn, which I think always helps. I think I would probably look comfortable playing with Luke Schenn because Luke Schenn has seen it all. But I thought Del Gaiso looked good. I thought Adam Wilsby had a great game as well. I thought a lot of the young players looked good. And so did Andrew Brunette, actually. Andrew Brunette actually talked about this in the post game, what he saw from some of the younger players. And he mentioned some of them by name. This is what he had to say.
Again, reiterate, I was really happy with our young guys. The Ufcos and the Delgazos and Mosby. They put they went after it. So they put their best game ahead of us, and I was glad that they were able to do that. That's a great sign, I think, for a young player to be able to make an impression when you have to make an impression, put your best foot forward when you need to. And I thought they did that tonight. So you take away it's an exhibition game, and that wasn't the real Tampa Bay Lightning. But I think for our group, for our young guys to have that kind of game, I think with Kemmel too, I thought he played, for me, the best game that I had my eyes on him. So that's where I get the most joy of tonight, is to see those younger kids play it to the level that they're getting close to playing.
This is how you build a winning team. I think it's not necessarily, yes, the top guys needs to be good every game and drive the team, but it's with the depth of your team that makes you successful.
I love that quote from Jonathan Marchessault. As somebody who has won a Stanley Cup, yes, you have to have your Philip Forsbergs, your Roman Josis. It's going to help to have your Steven Stamkos and your Jonathan Marchessault. But it's the depth players. And you saw these young players putting, like Bruno said, their best foot forward, showing like, hey, I'm getting ready to perhaps be one of those depth players for you. And I think it's very encouraging. And you and I have said this, since July 1st, Barry Trotz has put this team in a great situation, but one of the most exciting things is what he has not sacrificed. And I think that is these young players. And the longer that they have to go through a Nashville Predators training camp and then grow under Carl Taylor and staff in Milwaukee, the better this Predators team's chances are going to be long-term as well. So I thought it was just a really good game. Again, 6-0. Probably not going to see that when we play Tampa Bay at the end of October. I'm just saying. But we saw some good things from an evaluation standpoint. Of course, the Predators have a couple of preseason games coming up later this week against Carolina. So we're going to preview those games, tell you what we're looking for as they come along. And then the rescheduled game that was canceled on Friday is going to be October 7th in Tampa Bay as well. I don't know, like, Emma, are we going to see Steven Stamkos at that point? I'm thinking we're going to see the people we're going to see. And I just want to get it over with.
I know, but I'm with you, but I'm telling you, I don't think it's going to happen. I think we see Stamkos play against Carolina the night before, or the game before. One thing I just want to add really quickly, I think that, you talk about and what Marchessault said with the depth players, and you need those guys. And we've talked about this before. You need your top guys to be your top guys. Like, you're not going to win without them. But I think Nashville for so long has had and this has honestly been a critique that a lot of people have had of the Predators for this long. It's like, it's been an entire team full of depth players. And it's like,
Yes.
great. Those guys are great and they all have a role to play. But like, it just, in this environment, when it's like that's all this team has, it's just there's been too much pressure put on them. And I think that now, with the construction of the team and the organization and the depth the way it is, it would seem like, there's less pressure for those guys, those depth guys, to be anything more than depth guys. And I don't think that I don't mean that as a way to kind of diminish their role. I think it's just like, it allows them to really thrive and fulfill the role that they are meant to fulfill, and not try to, not get too in their heads, and not, try to be more than they are or be something they're not,
Yes.
and that's not to say that they're any less valuable because they're depth players and they're not the superstars. But I think it's just, understanding what guys are, what their roles are, and like putting them in the best position to succeed. And I think that that's kind of what we're starting to see, again, very early, but we're kind of starting to see that with this Predators team. And I think that, again, that's a credit to Barry Trotz and how he's built this team.
Yeah. It's going to be great to see what Nashville gets out of this amazing top six. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be very important for their success to see what do you get out of, your bottom six this season. And they're going to be very important players, like you said, very important role players. It's going to be interesting to see who they are. What is this opening night roster going to look like? We are going to be talking about opening night roster ideas and our thoughts on that. Would love to hear from you about who you think has done enough to perhaps earn a spot in the opening night. And also want to invite you, if you want to talk Predators hockey past the podcast, want to invite you to join the Locked On Predators Insider Program via subtext. It's a chance to chat with Emma and I post podcast about all things Nashville Predators. Share with us your thoughts on the games, your ideas about what is and isn't working. And of course, we love to use those comments and that feedback on the podcast as well. So you can find all of that information in the description of this video and in the show's bio as well. Before we sign off, Emma, let everyone know where to find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me online at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That is going to do it for this Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We're going to see you then.